Greetings, bloggers, vloggers, followers, and potters. Dustin here from Dustin's Dynasty with another edition of this week's vlog. Every week we take a look at something of the part of autism, or Asperger's, or mental health. I've been living this autism journey most of my life. I'm a middle-aged man now. I've been working part-time for about 15 years, and I've been living on my own over 7 years and 5 years solid in this current situation. And it's been a life, it's been a journey, but today we're going to talk about it and talk a little bit about what do I need to do in certain situations. And when I talk about that specifically, um, you know, sometimes things are just plain hard. There's no way to look at it. Sometimes, reality strikes. Sometimes reality is, having to take care of your mental health. And autism and mental health often go hand in hand. There's comorbidities such as what I have, like bipolar disorder, anxiety, things like that. And they're not easy to do. I've been told a time or two that autism itself is not easy to bear, and without a doubt, I know that. And there's not part of me that wishes that part would go away, like having to deal with the added stress of anxiety that anxiety brings to the table, the need to care and treat for my bipolar disorder. I wish that would somewhat go away sometimes, but I'm starting to learn and starting to accept, especially this year, that that's just part of what we do. That's part of what we do in this house and in this world. We take care of ourselves. We do what we need to do, even when it hurts and we don't want to do it. And sometimes when we don't, or sometimes when we don't think about caring for ourselves first as autistic individuals, or listening to the advice that is sometimes given to us, we fall astray of that. We cause, frustration, not among ourselves, only among ourselves, but we cause it more so among others. And that can be hard. I think sometimes, life cannot be easy sometimes. Sometimes we see things in a negative mindset. We say, oh, we have to do this or we have to do that. And, sometimes anxiety builds into part of that says, the fears, the what can go wrong, what will make it bad, so on and so forth. And, maybe, if we're not having the greatest of days, we take that out sometimes on those that we love. And sometimes it's hard for those that love us and want to care for us, um, to be their best selves for us and see, and it hurts them more than all, and we sometimes don't see that. And more this year, I have begun to see that. And sometimes what I also don't see is the fact that they're doing so much for me when they have so many other things going on in their life, as they're aging and getting older. There's so much they have to do for others, and they're giving themselves so much, and they're doing things that I may not recognize what right away, or be grateful for, or show gratitude for. And what I do, even when they need their moment of support or their moment to do what they need to do for themselves, is not show the caring and compassion that I need to show for them. And in those times when they need to do what they want to do or what they need to do, I'm not being my best self. I'm not doing what I need to do to be able to cope with myself in that moment and do, what I need to do to get through that situation. Granted, it may be things like for them going to the mall or going to the grocery store that, it may not be on my mind. What might be on my mind at that moment is, getting home because I need my comfort, my relaxation, my time to myself. And maybe, maybe there is a time that I'm maybe pushed too far or not seeing that I'm caring for myself in the way that I need to. And sometimes, I lose my ability to hold it together. And sometimes I know what I need to do to hold myself together. But when we're in a state where we're not cared for or we're not caring for ourselves, what we work so hard for is just gone out the window. It's gone, and all we can see through ourselves is what can we get what we need at that moment? What can we need to do to get through this situation that we don't really want to go through, but we know if we say something, it hurts the other party, it makes them upset. And sometimes we have to do things that, we just don't want to do. We may have to go to a social situation or have to navigate something for a family. And this week has been about that. And while for the most part, I can manage that part, so much of our social battery or our battery can be worn down. And when it's worn down, we become our worst. But sometimes we have to be the one too that has to take responsibility and own up for what we do to care for ourselves and be there for ourselves so that we are our best, so that those that are helping us or doing with us or whatever can do what they want to do too, and we don't have to show the pity party or the show that we have to be, oh, it has to be all about us or about all that we do as what do we need and how the world is so much centered around us. Now, for a long time in my life, early on, and I've read this up later this week, before there were mental health treatments like medication and so forth, which I have learned the hard way about the past several years that is a much necessary thing for me. People who are raising autistic children, teenagers, youth, young adults, and even into adulthood often walk on eggshells because there is so much predictability that we as autistic individuals would like to have or, you know, expect. And if that one thing goes wrong or that thing that sets us off happens, it spends us into a whirlwind, and sometimes we don't see how those that love us and care for us um, are often were there when they were walking on eggshells, how they had to be ready to jump at the rescue and save us from what we were experiencing, from what set us off and caused us to spin out of control or spin completely out of whack and go into our ways of being the way we were because what set us off, and finding out what that solution was. And you know I am forever grateful, and I continue to see this more and more as I mature into life and I get more grounded mentally and physically and socially, that my parents did a lot for me even back then, and they continue to do stuff even as time is hard now to make sure that my needs are cared for, that things are what they are and what they need to be. And part of me is part of what I have to do, part of me and what I have to do is that I have to hold myself responsible too. on my end of the bargain. That means taking care of my mental health in the way that I need to, being responsible, speaking up for what I need to do, to care for what I need at that moment. If I need to maybe, we're in the grocery store, maybe I need to use the restroom. Maybe I need to be open and honest about that. Maybe I need to step away and take a break for a few minutes. And part of me, as I'm coming from the dark ages of autism, and when things were not really figured out about autistic people who don't need some, who weren't who were able to communicate or navigated the world as I do. Things weren't really clamped down back then. We didn't have things that were as open as they are today, like social stories, ABA, those things like that. So a lot of that I didn't get the scope of. There may have been a few books or a few people who wrote stories, about those things. But, back when I was diagnosed in 1998, things like what they are not were definitely not like they were today. We didn't have professionals that were educated in the way that you could find in a college class, for example, or that they took, specialized training like they do today. So things were completely different back then. And, as I get older, I myself also have to be responsible for doing the proper research and seeing that, or the proper reading and the proper knowledge doing and seeing what works and what doesn't work for me to be well, for me to stay well, those sort of things, so that, I can be my best for those who love me when they really need me to. And it's holding up, it's also holding up my part of the deal of being responsible and doing what's right, because that, my friends, is what matters most. uh, you know, I have the tools, I know what I need to do in many parts, and it's always learning and growing more and more and more as we get older and as we mature and as we learn what didn't work years ago, and becoming more grounded and more rooted in what needs to be better for us, and what we as adults, as we autistically age into being an adult, what we need to do to navigate the world and mature and realize, maybe families getting older, and maybe we need to be more responsible for what we do as ourselves and carrying ourselves on and moving forward and doing what's right for us. It's having that responsibility, doing what we need to do, just being the best that we can be by the way that we know we can be, and doing what's continually right, even if, we may think it's hard. And, it takes time for us too. We too have to remember that there is a responsibility that we have to carry for ourselves, and we have to prioritize what needs being done over, everything else in the world. And that sometimes we have to do what we have to do to care for ourselves. And that may mean putting special interest aside, knowing it's okay to say no to certain things, just taking the time to do what we need to do. There's also parts of us, if, you're a person like me who lives on their own, a person that has to uphold, a responsibility of, taking care of their living space, for example, or, paying bills, or, going to medical appointments, or getting groceries, or doing laundry. Those things too, take time and responsibility, and they're not while they're not all great and big things, they are things that take a lot of skill, a lot of task execution, a lot of executive functioning. So they take a lot too, and sometimes they also may require rest. And sometimes we don't see that. And sometimes we don't always see that life is never perfect. It's about progress over perfection. But when we're progressing, it may take more time than what we think, or we may have to take extra time for ourselves. And that too is hard, and it's hard to accept, but it is part of being responsible. It is part of doing what's right. It is being there for those that need us too, but it's also knowing how can we take care of ourselves? What can we do to get through those situations that are hard for us? What can we do to make it through this? And how can we cope? What can we do that's best for us? And we have to accept within ourselves as autistic individuals that it's okay to do what we need to do to care for ourselves so that we can be our best when we have to and when we need to. So that pretty much, sums that up. And, it just takes being responsible, doing the right thing, being there for who we need to be there for, and doing just what's right every day, no matter what, no matter how hard it is. So I want to thank you for listening today. If you haven't already, be sure to like and subscribe to this video. Always appreciate the new subscribers, the new followers. I much appreciate that. If you haven't already, be sure to give me a like or a follow on Facebook, Instagram, uh, X, and Pinterest. If you haven't already, visit my website. That's www.dustisdynastyusa.com. And lastly, I have a link tree that has all my socials, all my podcasting platforms where you can find this and other videos and other relevant links. That handle is Dustin's Dynasty under Linktree. Again, I want to thank you for listening. Let's take care of ourselves this weekend. Let's have a good weekend. Take care of yourselves. Stay safe out there. Remember, you matter. You are enough. You are loved. Let's have a good weekend, everyone. Take care of yourselves, and we'll talk at you soon. Bye for now.